Today we're going to start from scratch and answer one of the most searched terms on Google. What is Bitcoin? If you're worried that we're going to get too technical and use a lot of complicated words, don't. Here at Mining Automatic, we translate Bitcoin into plain English. So even if you have no technical background, you'll be able to understand everything. By the end of this video series, you'll know more about Bitcoin and how it works than the vast majority of the population. So let's get started. Before we talk about Bitcoin, I want to take a moment to talk about money. What is money exactly? At its core, money represents value. If I do some work for you, you give me money in exchange for the value that I give you. I can then use that money to get something of value from someone else in the future. Throughout history, value has taken many forms, and people used a lot of different materials to represent money. Salt, wheat, shells, and of course gold have all been used as a medium of exchange. However, for something to represent value, people have to trust that it is indeed valuable and will stay valuable long enough for them to redeem that value in the future. Up until 100 years ago or so, we always trusted in something to represent money. However, something happened along the way and we've changed our trust model from trusting something to trusting someone. Let me explain. Over time, people found it too cumbersome to walk around the world carrying bars of gold or other forms of money. So paper money was invented. Here's how it worked. A bank or government would offer to take possession of your bar of gold, let's say worth $1,000, and in return, that bank would give you receipt certificates, which we call bills, amounting to $1,000. Not only were these pieces of paper much easier to carry, but you could spend $1 on a cup of coffee and not have to cut your gold bar into 1,000 pieces. And if you wanted your gold back, you simply took $1,000 in bills back to the bank to redeem them for the actual form of money. In this case, that gold bar. And so paper began its use as money as an instrument of practicality and convenience. However, as time progressed and due to macroeconomic changes, this bond between the paper receipt and the gold it stands for was broken. Now, to explain the path that led us away from the gold standard is extremely complex, but suffice it to say that the governments told their people that the government itself would be liable for the value of that paper money. Basically, we all said, let's just forget about gold and trade paper instead. So people continued to trade with receipts that were backed by nothing but the government's promise. And why did that continue to work? Well, because of trust. Even though there was no actual commodity backing paper money, people trusted the government, and that's how fiat money was created. Fiat is a Latin word that means by decree, meaning the dollars or euros or any other currency for that matter have value because the government orders it to. It's what is known as legal tender, coins or banknotes that must be accepted if offered as payment. So the value of today's money actually comes from a legal status given to it by a central authority. In this case, the government. Fiat money has two main drawbacks. Number one, it's centralized. You have a central authority that controls and issues it. In this case, the government or central bank. Number two, it is not limited by quantity. The government or central bank can print as much as they want whenever needed and inflate the money supply on the market. The problem with printing money is that because you're flooding the market with more money, the value of each dollar drops, so your own money is worth less. When you see price rises throughout the years, it's not necessarily that prices are rising as much as the purchasing power of your money is dropping. You need more dollars to buy something that used to cost less. Once fiat money was in place, the move to digital money was pretty simple. We already have a central authority that issues money, so why not make money mostly digital and let that authority keep track of who owns what? Today, we mainly use credit cards, wire transfers, PayPal, and other forms of digital money. The amount of physical money in the world is almost negligible and is getting smaller with each year that passes. So if money today is digital, how does that even work? I mean, if I have a file that represents $1, what's to stop me from copying it 1,000,000 times and having $1 million? This is called the double spend problem. The solution that banks use today is a centralized solution. They keep a ledger on their computer which keeps track of who owns what. Everyone has an account of this ledger and keeps a tally for each account. We all trust the bank and the bank trusts their computer, and so the solution is centralized on this ledger in this computer. You may not know this, but there were many attempts to create alternative forms of digital currencies. However, none of them were successful in solving the double spend problem without a central authority. Whenever you give someone control over the money supply, you're giving them enormous power, and this creates three major issues. The first issue is corruption. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. When banks have a mandate to create money or value, they basically control the flow of value in the world, which gives them almost unlimited power. The second issue of a centralized system is mismanagement. If the central authority's interest isn't aligned with the people it controls, there may be a case of mismanagement of the money. For example, printing a lot of money in order to save a certain bank or institution from collapsing, as what we saw happen in the 2008 financial collapse. or the massive amounts of money printing we saw in 2021 and 2022 in response to the global pandemic. The last issue is control. You are basically giving away all of your control of money to the government or bank. At any point in time, the government can decide to freeze your account and deny you access of your funds. This was the state of things until 2009. Creating an alternative to the current monetary system seemed like a lost cause. But then everything changed. In October 2008, a document was published online by a guy calling himself Satoshi Nakamoto. The document, also called a white paper, suggested a way of creating a system for a decentralized currency called Bitcoin. This system claimed to create digital money that solves the double spend problem without the need of a central authority. At its core, Bitcoin is a transparent ledger without a central authority. But what does this confusing phrase even really mean? Well, let's compare to Bitcoin to the bank. Since most money today is already digital, the bank basically manages its own ledger of balances and transactions. However, the bank's ledger is not transparent and it is stored in the bank's main computer. You can't sneak a peek into the bank's ledger, and only the bank has complete control over it. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is a transparent ledger. At any point in time, I can sneak a peek into the ledger and see all of the transactions and balances that are taking place. The only thing you can't figure out is who owns these balances and who is behind each transaction. This means Bitcoin is pseudo-anonymous. Everything is open, transparent, and trackable, but you still can't tell who is sending what to whom. Bitcoin is also decentralized. There is no one computer that holds the ledger. With Bitcoin, every computer that participates in the system is also keeping a copy of the ledger, also known as the blockchain. So if you want to take down the system or hack the ledger, you'll have to take down thousands of computers which are keeping a copy and constantly updating it. Like most money today, Bitcoin is also digital. This means that there's nothing physical that you can touch in Bitcoin. There are no actual coins. There are only rows of transactions and balances. When you own Bitcoin, it means that you own the right to access a specific Bitcoin address record in the ledger and send funds from it to a different address. So what does all of this mean? Why is Bitcoin such big news? Well, for the first time since digital money came into existence, we now have an alternative to the current system. Bitcoin is a form of money that no government or bank can control. Think about the time before the internet, how centralized the flow of information was. Basically, if you wanted information, you could get it from a few major players like New York Times, The Washington Post, and others like them. Today, thanks to the internet, information is decentralized and you can communicate and consume knowledge from around the world with a click of a button. Bitcoin is the internet of money, and it's offering a decentralized solution to money. Bitcoin has several advantages over the current system. First, it gives you complete control over your money. With Bitcoin, you and you alone can access your funds. No government or bank can decide to freeze your account or confiscate your holdings. Bitcoin also cuts a lot of the middleman from the process of transferring money. This means that in many cases, Bitcoin is cheaper to use than traditional wire transfers or money orders. Unlike fiat currencies, Bitcoin was designed to be digital by nature. This means you can add additional layers of programming on top of it and turn it into smart money. But more on that in later videos. Finally, Bitcoin opens up a digital commerce to 2.5 billion people around the world who don't have access to the current banking system. These people are unbanked or underbanked because of where they live and the reality that they have been born into. However, today, with a mobile phone and a click of a button, they can start trading using Bitcoin, no permission needed. It's important to note that Bitcoin is what we call hard money. Unlike fiat currencies, which can be printed at will, it's very difficult to create more Bitcoin. In fact, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in existence. This limited supply makes Bitcoin resistant to inflation, which is one reason why some see it as a store of value similar to gold. The blockchain, which we'll explain more about in our next video, is the technology underlying Bitcoin and can be thought of as a public record or puzzle. Each Bitcoin transaction has a unique shape that fits into this puzzle. Because everyone has a copy of this public record, it's nearly impossible to fake a Bitcoin transaction. It simply wouldn't fit into the existing puzzle. In recent years, we've seen massive institutional adoption of Bitcoin. BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, has nearly $10 trillion in assets under management and has launched a Bitcoin spot ETF. This move signals growing mainstream acceptance of Bitcoin as a legitimate asset class. In January 2024, the US Securities and Exchange Commission approved the first Bitcoin spot ETFs in the United States, marking a significant milestone in Bitcoin's journey toward mainstream financial acceptance. Major companies like Tesla, MicroStrategy, and Square have added Bitcoin to their balance sheets, treating it as a store of value and a hedge against inflation. Countries like El Salvador have adopted Bitcoin as legal tender to Today, there are several merchants online and offline that accept Bitcoin. You can order a flight or book a hotel with Bitcoin if you like. There are even Bitcoin debit cards that allow you to pay at almost any store with your Bitcoin balance. However, the road toward acceptance by the majority of the public is still a long one. This balance between increasing institutional adoption and yet to be realized mass public adoption actually presents a unique window of opportunity to us right now. Here's what I mean. The crypto market has matured beyond its speculative beginnings, but we are still far from peak adoption. This sweet spot offers a rare combination: lower risk than the early days, coupled with potential for significant returns. It's like getting in on Amazon when they were still mainly selling books, established enough to be credible, but still possessing massive room for growth. The revolution of money began in 2009, and we at Mining Automatic believe it will continue to change money as we know it. Thanks again for joining me here. I'm Trevor Larson, and I'll see you in a bit.